Urgent, a night of horrors for the occupiers. Strikes on occupied Crimea and Rostov. Ukrainian drones destroyed oil refineries and paralyzed the fuel industry in Russia. Kilometer-long lines and panic at gas stations. These scenes are blowing up the internet. Fierce battles on the front line. Right now, the Ukrainian armed forces are forcing the Russians to flee. The line of contact is on fire. Putin's meat grinder is at full throttle. Ukraine's successes in Zaporizhia and Pokrovsk. The enemy is in panic. Drones are going into battle. Target 2 in action. Our soldiers have shown equipment that takes on deadly risks. Ukrainian machines versus the Russian meat grinder. A catastrophe in the Russian army. Soldiers are refusing to go to war even for money. Recruitment in Russia has come to a halt. The Russian general staff is in a panic. The collapse of mobilization, an epidemic, and the complete failure of the so-called special military operation. All this in our episode of Hellpoint. A night of total explosions for the occupiers. Strikes on Rostov and Sevastopol. Ukrainian drones destroyed an oil refinery right under the nose of supposedly impenetrable defenses. Gasoline panic. Russia is out of fuel. Kilometer-long lines at gas stations. Ukrainian drone attacks have caused the swamps to lose 13.5% of their oil refining capacity. The armed forces of Ukraine struck a GRU military unit in Crimea. Hellish footage for your attention.
Sevastopol was shaken once again by powerful strikes. Ukraine's defense forces attacked military targets in the temporarily occupied city.
They blew it up, damn it.
According to local social media channels, explosions were heard at Cape Violent and in the area of Kazakya Bay. Preliminary reports also indicate a strike on a Russian Black Sea Fleet military unit, which currently houses the Russian Defense Ministry's GRU. We are still awaiting official confirmation from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Meanwhile, the occupation authorities were quick to pass off the nighttime explosions as scheduled firefighting and emergency response drills. These so-called drills, which for some reason took place at 3 in the morning with building explosions and subsequent fires, are yet another absurdity in the style of Russian propaganda. At the same time, new strikes were reported on Russian territory. Ukrainian drones once again hit the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery in the Rostov region. This facility is the only operating oil refinery in the region and a key fuel supplier in southern Russia. The refinery is of strategic importance, connected to the main Transneft oil pipeline, and has its own storage tanks, railway station, and tanker fleet. It is from here that both the civilian sector and the occupying army are supplied with fuel and aviation kerosene. The refinery's proximity to the Ukrainian border makes it a convenient but vulnerable supply base for Russian troops. It is no coincidence that this refinery has already been targeted by Ukrainian attacks multiple times. Strikes were recorded on June 22, 2022, March 13th, May 4th, June 6th, December 19th, 2024, as well as at the beginning of 2025. After the latest attacks, the refinery was forced to halt operations twice. Ukrainian drones have caused real chaos in the Russian oil refining industry. Drone attacks have forced Russia to say goodbye to more than 13% of its refinery capacity. For example, on August 2nd, drones struck the Novokuybishevsk refinery owned by Rosneft. This giant, which processes more than 8 million tons of oil annually, simply came to a standstill. 9 days later, on August 11th, the Saratov refinery, which also belongs to Rosneft and processes more than 5 million tons per year, was shut down. And on August 15th, the real climax came. The Volgograd refinery, the largest in southern Russia, and the Samara refinery, which processes 8 million tons annually, also fell victim to drone attacks. As a result, in just 3 weeks, Russia lost 4.43 million tons of annual capacity. That's 13.5% of their total capacity. What consequences is Russia already feeling from this? We've gathered information about this for you in our report.
In Primorsky Krai, there are kilometer-long lines at gas stations due to a fuel shortage.
This is the line at Melnikhnaya. In short, this is the situation at Alliance.
Well, it's probably already about a kilometer long. Everyone here is waiting for some gas?
Currently, there are gasoline shortages in many regions of the Russian Federation. Earlier, in annexed Crimea, gas station shortages arose due to the special military operation. And in Zabaikalsky Krai, they started selling gasoline with ration cards. The main reasons are inflation, high demand, and constant strikes on oil refineries. The last factor is becoming especially significant. Ukrainian drones attack Russian oil refineries almost every night. This is a strike on the Lukoil oil refinery in the Volgograd region, which is among the top 10 in Russia and is one of the largest producers of petroleum products in the southern federal district. Over the past week, Ukrainian UAVs have struck oil refineries 3 times already. The plant has ceased operations approximately until mid-September.
We are now seeing consistent reports almost every single day that major, significant, and indeed crucial oil refineries in the European part of the continent have been severely affected. The most recent is the Volgograd Lukoil plant, and drones are even reaching as far as the Ukhta plant in Komi, also a Lukoil facility, and some plants have simply shut down.
On August 2nd, after UAV strikes, the Novokubishevsk oil refinery halted its operations. On August 11th, the Saratov oil refinery stopped receiving raw materials. On August 15th, it became known that the Volgograd oil refinery had stopped, and on the same day, after a drone attack, the Samara oil refinery also ceased accepting oil for processing.
Drone attacks on Russian oil refineries, which intensified in August and led to the shutdown of at least 4 major refineries, have deprived the economy of 1/7 of its most powerful oil processing capacity. Thus, in just under 3 weeks, oil producers lost 44.3 million tons of annual refinery capacity, minus 13.5% of the country's total, which stands at 328 million tons per year.
According to Reuters, repairs at some plants will take at least a month, and the Samara refinery will be idle until the end of August. Repair difficulties are related to sanctions.
Western equipment for oil refineries fell under European restrictive measures as part of the very first package due to the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. And this is causing disruptions. As a result, in 2025, Russia is once again facing a gasoline shortage. Exchange prices for AI-92 and AI-95 gasoline have soared since the beginning of the year by 40% and 50% respectively, setting new historical records: 71,097 rubles per ton and 81,337 rubles per ton.
If Ukraine continues to strike Russian oil refineries, the problems with prices and the availability of gasoline in Russia will only get worse. And the current lines for fuel in some regions of Russia will seem like nothing compared to what could happen, for example, in just a month.
If the Ukrainian forces were to completely ignore President Biden's explicit request not to strike vital oil terminals situated along the strategic Black Sea coastline, such as the significant facilities in Novorossiysk and Tuapse, or indeed those located on the important Baltic Sea, where Ust-Luga and Primorsk stand as the 2 primary and crucial terminals, and subsequently commence aggressive attacks against them, this action would undoubtedly and seriously impede Russia's fundamental ability to efficiently export its valuable oil resources.
Strikes on Russian oil refineries and the loss of their capacities, as well as the potential increase in attacks, are a serious trump card in possible negotiations between Zelensky and Putin.
Frontline fury. Ukrainian drones have smashed Russian defenses. An S-300 air defense system was destroyed in Zaporizhzhia. The armed forces of Ukraine have liberated 6 settlements in the Dobropilya direction. Victory near Pokrovsk. In Russia, more than 30 paratroopers deliberately shot themselves for money and awards. Watch all the details right now. An S-300 was destroyed by a drone in the Zaporizhzhia direction, a spectacular explosion and 1 less Russian air defense system. A strike drone unit of the 27th Pechersk Brigade of the National Guard hit an S-300V surface-to-air missile system. A powerful detonation of the ammunition turned the launcher into a firework, clearly visible in the drone footage. This system was a key element of the enemy's air defense. Its destruction significantly weakens the Russians' ability to protect their positions and equipment from Ukrainian strikes. In addition, the Guards destroyed 2 more pieces of equipment with precise drops. For the occupiers, it's 1 less air defense system. For us, it's another step toward air superiority. In the Dobropilya direction, the armed forces of Ukraine cleared 6 settlements of Russian occupiers. In 3 days, our soldiers eliminated 206 enemies, wounded 73, and captured 1 more. They also took out 3 tanks, 3 armored vehicles, 24 vehicles, 12 cannons, and 35 drones from the occupiers. More details about the situation on other sections of the front in the following report. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, Ukrainian drones delivered a powerful strike against Russian logistics. Between the occupied towns of Urozhain and Tokmak, a fuel train was blown up. As reported by the advisor to the mayor of Mariupol, Petro Andriushchenko, the train derailed, after which it was finished off with everything that could fly. Effectively, the railway connection for the Russian army through the occupied part of Zaporizhzhia region was paralyzed. The strike was carried out by the UAV battalion Ronins from the 65th Separate Mechanized Brigade. Meanwhile, the situation at the front remains tense. According to Deep State, the enemy has advanced in the area of the Serebryanske forestry in Luhansk region and near the settlement of Olhivska in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Taking advantage of identified weaknesses in the defense, if these areas were previously considered relatively stable, now the enemy is trying to apply pressure. The Pokrovsk direction remains the most difficult. Over the past day, Ukrainian soldiers have repelled 50 assault attacks here in the areas of Volodymyrivka, Mayak, Novoekonomichne, Rodinske, Horodivka, Novoukrainka, and other settlements.
The situation remains extremely tense. In other words, the enemy has concentrated a very large amount of the resources they have here. First and foremost, the occupiers are trying to make use of that resource. This is an extremely large number of manpower, in other words, disposable orcs. These could be occupiers with completely different levels of training or hastily gathered, excuse my language, vagrants, mercenaries, criminals, convicts, I don't know, just people rounded up there, untrained, unequipped. Yes, unfortunately, there are also among them highly trained, highly skilled special forces units. Moreover, there are quite professional pilots and quite professional artillerymen.
In addition to infantry used for attrition, the Russians are actively deploying various types of UAVs, trying to strike at the rear up to 30 kilometers deep.
In fact, the concept of a front line no longer really exists. There is simply a zone of activity, a zone of contact, and enemy UAVs, various types of FPV drones, some strike wings. They can fly in 5, 10, 15, 20, even 30 kilometers deep. So there are all sorts of cases. The enemy really does use different tactics, but sometimes they succeed and sometimes they don't. But in most cases, these assault attempts are unsuccessful for the enemy.
Heavy fighting continues in other directions as well. In the Novopavlivka and Lyman sectors, there were 61 combat engagements over the past day. The enemy attacked the areas of Hrushivka, Zeleny Hai, Timirivka, Komishuvaka, Zelena Dolina, Kolodiazy, Torske Yampol, and Rihorivka. Activity remains high in the Toretsk, Kupiansk, southern Slobozhansky, and Pridniprovske directions. And despite the difficult situation in the skies over the Lyman region, an interesting incident occurred. 2 FPV drones simultaneously hunted an enemy strike UAV. Anti-aircraft gunners from the Steel Lions Brigade and pilots from the 53rd Brigade tried to destroy the Russian Molnia. In the end, the target was hit. The past 24 hours have also been among the most intense on the front. The enemy carried out missile and airstrikes, conducted artillery shelling, and used drones. In turn, the defense forces of Ukraine are steadfastly holding the line and striking back. Over the past day, our fighters struck 9 areas where enemy personnel, weapons, and equipment were concentrated, 2 artillery systems, and 1 important facility belonging to the Russian invaders. The General Staff is not disclosing details for now and is making it clear to the Russians any attempt at an offensive will be destroyed. Every assault, every drone, and every enemy vehicle is under fire. More than 30 soldiers from the elite 83rd Air Assault Brigade of the Russian Army deliberately shot themselves in order to get money and escape from the front. The main military investigative directorate of the Russian Federation has completed its investigation into the case of fake combat injuries. After the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, more than 30 Russian paratroopers intentionally inflicted gunshot wounds on themselves, which were then documented as combat injuries. This allowed them to receive compensation of up to 3 million rubles, a leave of absence, and preferential medical treatment. Moreover, these fake injuries were used as grounds for applying for state awards, the Order of Courage and the Medal for Bravery. The case involves high-ranking officers, Guard Colonel Artem Gorodilov and his subordinate, Lieutenant Colonel Konstantin Frolov.
Almost all of the occupiers who tried to gain a foothold in the Pokrovsk direction were destroyed by the Ukrainian armed forces. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, during a meeting with journalists. According to the head of state, in this direction, Ukrainian soldiers eliminated 90, and in some cases even 100% of the occupiers who had seriously penetrated deep through our lines. In other areas, the situation remains unchanged for now. However, it is under control, the president assured. He added that there are some positive results regarding the Luhansk region, and at the same time emphasized that the enemy is building up forces in the Zaporizhzhia sector. It is known that the Russians are transferring some of their forces there from the Kursk direction. Ukrainian defenders are also conducting counter-sabotage operations in the northern part of Kupiansk, where sabotage groups have been detected. As for the Kharkiv region, the situation there is stable. Zelensky said this.
The Targan 2 drone is saving soldiers' lives. The latest Ukrainian robots are taking on deadly missions, while Russia throws its own people into the meat grinder. Modern machines deliver ammunition where a human would not survive, while Russia continues to destroy its own in senseless assaults. Ukrainian robots versus Russian cannon fodder. The army of the future is already on the front lines.
At this training ground, soldiers of the 210th Separate Assault Regiment are honing their skills in operating ground robots, because every such mission must be practiced down to the smallest detail. It depends on this whether their comrades receive supplies or an extra batch of ammunition.
We're simulating that this is just a bush. This robot is called Targan 2. It's a very reliable machine. The maximum load it can carry is about 150 kilograms. But if needed, if you really want to, and it's a short distance, you can load it with even more. This platform has a range of about 15 kilometers.
It seems simple. You load it up, camouflage it, and the robot sets off. However, it's not that simple. A whole team monitors its movement from a specially camouflaged location.
I see a drone.
Gain altitude. How's the signal? Everything's fine. Ai Petri, this is Bindaz. Tolik, I'm starting to move.
Ponochka is the UAV operator. Her task is to guide the robot to the required positions, carefully monitor everything happening around, and make sure there are no obstacles in the Targan's path.
I see a pole. There's some kind of ditch ahead.
And then just the same to bring the robot back, home, as the soldiers say.
In civilian life, by education, I'm a speech therapist and psychologist. And actually, I worked in speech therapy for 5 years with children. After that, I moved into the field of IT recruitment, and I worked there for about 1.5 years. Then the war started, and since 2022, I've been serving.
In the 210th Assault Regiment, almost everyone is a volunteer. And although they are responsible here for this kind of smart technology, they say the most important thing is the people who operate it. They came from different professions and are now mastering the latest weapons of war.
Tasks as basic as bringing something in or out of a position should be done by robots, not people. And then our limited human resources can be effectively directed toward more complex and highly responsible tasks, rather than simply just delivering something that is physically heavy.
Filin is responsible for the robot itself and its deployment. In civilian life, he worked as a construction worker abroad. He returned to join the military and defend his homeland.
Go around the lion's trench on the left.
My role is to deliver the cargo, guide the robot so it reaches the unloading point without any obstacles, and, of course, make sure it returns back.
And Miguel, the crew commander, previously worked in logistics and automation. Now his experience helps organize combat missions.
In this mission, my task was to organize the deployment of the position, set up the process, that is, establish communications, set up the workspace, control the crew, and plan the mission.
Go! Is it moving? Stop!
The unloading is done.
Close the hatch.
After each mission, the team gathers for a debrief.
We will conduct an after-action analysis. We'll listen to each person individually to find out what anyone was lacking, so that during actual combat operations, we can avoid any shortcomings or mistakes that may have occurred today.
Behind the 210th Assault Regiment are combat missions in Russia's Kursk region, in Sumy, Donetsk, and now in Zaporizhzhia.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.